Hi, welcome back to Let's Get Lit. In today's video, we're going to go over Chapter 6 of The Great Gatsby by F. Scott Fitzgerald. So, I hope you're ready because we're going to go back and see what happens next. Alright, let's begin Chapter 6 of The Great Gatsby. So, this chapter starts out with Nick telling us the actual history of Gatsby. That Gatsby's real name is J. Gatz. He legally changed it to J. Gatsby at the age of 17. Nick also tells us that James is originally from North Dakota, and that when he was 17, he began his career. It all started when he saw Dan Cody's yacht anchored on Lake Superior. James had been loafing around the beach that afternoon in a torn green jersey and a pair of canvas prints. When he noticed Cody's boat, James informed him that the wind might catch him and break him up in half an hour. Nick goes on to tell the reader that for over a year, Gatsby had been a clam digger and a salmon fisher on Lake Superior, and that these jobs brought him his food and his bed. He also mentions that Gatsby went to a small Lutheran college called St. Olaf in southern Minnesota. He stayed there for 2 weeks working his way as a janitor to help pay for his schooling. But he didn't stay long and drifted back to Lake Superior. When he was back at Lake Superior, this is when he met Dan Cody. It goes on to explain how he was a 50-year-old man that had made it rich in the Nevada silver fields. Ever since he made his money, multiple women had tried to come after him for his fortune. When Cody took Gatsby in, he bought him many new fine attires and brought him to the West Indies and the Barbary Coast. During this voyage, Gatsby served in many positions, as a steward, a maid, a skipper, a secretary, and even the jailer. Dan Cody told Gatsby his reputation between his drunk self and sober self. That way, if Dan needed someone, he would be able to rely on Gatsby to oversee all of his aspects of life. Because of Cody's wild drinking habits, that directly affected Gatsby's relationship with alcohol. Nick also mentions that Cody mainly stayed away from women because he knew of their plot to get his money. However, when one Ella Kay came on board one night in Boston, a week later Dan Cody inhospitably died. After Cody had died, Cody left his fortune to Mr. Gatsby. However, due to legal precedences, Gatsby didn't see any of that money, and instead, all of the money went to Ella Kay. The one thing Cody did leave Gatsby was this type of education. After Nick tells the reader of Gatsby's past, he informs us that he hasn't been around Gatsby for several weeks. However, on Sunday afternoon, he decides to go to Gatsby's house, wherein he was greeted and brought inside. Not even 2 minutes after he sits down, Tom Buchanan walks in. Not only does Tom walk in, but also a man named Sloan and a pretty woman in a brown riding uniform. All of them begin to talk, but the conversation is very tense. Gatsby lets Tom know that he knows his wife. Tom questions him about how he knows her. Tom asks Nick if he lives here, and Nick says that he lives right next door. After a few drinks, Mr. Sloan becomes cordial with everyone. Not long into the conversation, Mr. Sloan gets to his feet and informs the woman that they need to be heading off. The woman invites Gatsby to one of her next parties, and she insists upon him going. As Mr. Sloan and the woman get up to go out, Tom and Nick follow them outdoors. Gatsby excuses himself for a minute and then walks away. The rest of the group walk out to the porch where Sloan and the lady begin a conversation aside. Tom tells Nick that he believes Gatsby would be coming with them, but Tom says that he can't believe Gatsby can't realize she doesn't want him to come. He says that the woman is having a big dinner party, and that Gatsby won't know a soul there, and he wonders how Gatsby met Daisy. He comments how women seem to be running around too much these days, and it's not good for them. Then Sloan and the lady walk down the steps and mount their horses. Soon, Tom gets upon his horse as well and tells Nick to let Mr. Gatsby know they couldn't wait for him. Tom and Nick shake hands. The rest of them exchange a cool nod and they ride quickly down the driveway, disappearing. At that moment, Gatsby comes out with a hat and a light overcoat in hand from the door. The story then jumps to next Saturday at one of Gatsby's big parties. He'd invited Tom and Daisy to this party, and they showed up. Nick recalls the evening and how with Tom and Daisy there, he views the party with a different sort of eyes. What once was fun with many celebrities and famous sightings is now viewed as grand opulence. Nick introduces Tom and Daisy to all sorts of well-to-do people. Nick also mentions that at one point during the night, Gatsby and Daisy snuck away over to Nick's house to talk for half an hour. Alone. Daisy sets Nick on watch in case of a flood or fire or some mysterious act of God. When they come back from their private talk, everyone is seated at a table for dinner. Daisy tells Tom that he is free to go talk to whoever he wants to and take her little golden pencil to write down any address that he would like. Nick also mentions that during the night he noticed Gatsby and Daisy dancing. He remarks how well of a dancer Gatsby is, and how clean his boots are, something that he's never seen before. Not long after dinner, Gatsby excuses himself to take a phone call, and the three of them are left at a table with people whom Nick had known from a previous party, but they were now very intoxicated and becoming annoying. Nick tells the reader that he can see that from the interactions tonight, the only part of the party that Daisy really enjoyed was when her and Gatsby were able to be alone. He also mentions how Tom and Daisy's look of disdain for West Egg was very prominent. He then notes how a little later he was sitting on the front steps with them as they waited for their car. As they were waiting for their car, Tom asks how Gatsby came into his money. Tom says that he believes Gatsby is a bootlegger, to which Nick says no, he's not a bootlegger. Daisy chimes in and says that he has a chain of pharmacies that he brought up himself. Tom does not believe Daisy and says he will investigate this himself. As their car is coming up, Daisy looks back at Nick and wishes him a good night and stares longingly into the house. After Tom and Daisy leave, he stayed late that night. Gatsby had asked him to wait for him until he was free, which wasn't until the party had died down and all of the guests had left. Once everyone had left, Nick made his way into the house where he saw Gatsby. They have a conversation where Gatsby says that Daisy didn't like the party. Nick tries to refute and says that Daisy had a great time, but Gatsby stops him and says that Daisy did not have a good time. Nick tries to mention the dance, but Gatsby brushes it off. Gatsby informs Nick of what he truly wants, which is for Daisy to go to Tom and break off the marriage so that way Gatsby and Daisy can be together. He wants to marry her and be with her. Says to this, "You can't repeat the past," to which Gatsby says of course. Gatsby wants to fix everything just the way it was before. Gatsby says that he's afraid Daisy doesn't understand this. Gatsby then tells Nick the story of 5 years prior when he first kissed Daisy, and how from that moment on it changed his life. He wanted nothing more than to be with her forever. This is where Chapter 6 ends. Tune in next time as we go over Chapter 7 of The Great Gatsby. And as always, stay lit.